Next, we have Ray Wolf. Ray is VP of Emerging Services at OpenSymmetry, and he has been running the Austin Breakfast for a number of years. And Austin too is a very dynamic group for us. They are a group that really has created almost a local chapter for PSVillage. So I'm going to hand over to Ray. Ray, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I am, Joe. Good to
Okay,
speak with you.
terrific. Let me hand over to you, and you can get started. Thanks.
Well, Joe, the first comment I just want to make a quick one here in building upon the culture and the theme of PS Village. We have expanded beyond our semi-annual breakfasts, and this team here in Austin is rather close knit. We manage referrals to each other. We actually work on recruiting and challenges together, and are in process of developing some joint programs. So we're trying to solve some of the challenges facing professional service professionals as a community as opposed to individual companies. So, and that's all stemming from our relationship with PS Village.
Good. Thank you.
Hey, on the college recruiting front, want to share some of the best practices and ideas that came out of the collective group here. So the first thing, what we found that was really the source of new recruits out of college uh, was really through relationships. These were through recent graduates, recent recruits, and also executive relationships, and they may be alumni. So what we found is a lot of individual relationships with professors or contacts with colleges in the community, and also I'll just say in the state of Texas, that people were able to draw from. The first course of action was really to leverage the professor insight to identify early candidates as early as the junior year, and looking for some characteristics that would make someone a great consultant. And interesting enough, we've seen a shift from pursuing pure technical degrees, engineering, around science, technology, and we've seen the move towards history, philosophy, some of the liberal arts. And the companies in Austin have found that the attributes that make a good consultant are more inherent to the individual, and those can be identified by professors at the college level. And then much of the technical consulting work, particularly now in the age of SaaS products, we can supplement that through some training, some mentoring that would go on at the company level. So it's really expanded the number of candidates for us here in Austin with good success. In terms of best practices for recruits from the college, and I think this is kind of the new reoccurring theme with how people are socially interacting. Bringing in recruits in the class of 5 or more worked out really well. And success wasn't necessarily limited to, what are the benefits, what are the pay, is the work interesting? It really extended to who am I working with, who are my peers, and trying to find some camaraderie with that class as you enter into a company. And that was something that um, was found by many of the companies here in Austin. Also found that by going through with the recruiting class, not only aiding in the retention, but also the quick culling of candidates. And I would say candidates almost self-identified that they didn't fit or this was not the career for them. And what people liked about that is that before you invested a lot of time and resource, you were able to find the 2 or 3 that were going to work well and were worth investing.
Right.
With this kind of, I'm sorry, Joe?
Oh, that's good. Very good.
Okay.
Thanks.
With this program, kind of cut the onboarding time down to half, so we're able to deploy these new hires in about 3 months versus 6 months and get them client-facing and out on their own. A couple of the other items that came out here was around having a Futures Leaders program. There were several companies that had something, the name was slightly different, but this was in recognition that there is a career path at the company. And it wasn't just come into a consultant and we will move you up to senior consultant or engagement manager. It was basically, as we're going to identify you early, there was some special attention paid to you, as well as additional investment in terms of training and exposure to different opportunities. That was great for retention and also recruiting. And then really a must-have here, that's a best practice that I'm sure people have seen before, but just rigorous application was around assigning a senior consultant to be a mentor, and just really rigorous follow-up around that. It was key to keeping people on board.
Terrific. Thanks. Next slide.
Yeah,
And recruiting in
looking
general.
looking a little beyond now. Bringing in a mixture of talent, and so we love bringing in the college recruits. Certainly allows us to keep a very competitive blended rate. We like the energy level, but we also need to bring in people who are experienced, particularly as our market is growing rapidly here in the Austin area for companies. Many companies have looked internationally for resources. This was new for myself personally, and what was seen as going out to UK, Australia, and South Africa were new markets. They aren't traditionally offshoring locations that you look for people, but a little bit different here is this is actually going to get those resources and having them work on projects in the US and be client-facing percentage of the time, and then going back to their home countries and then supporting the projects long-term as a remote employee. Benefits for that financially were everywhere from 30 to 50% in compared to a U.S. resource. The 30% aligned with UK and the 50% with South Africa. This worked for everybody below director level. Director level salaries in these countries were on par with the U.S. So most of the recruiting was focused at levels below that. And then we were able to find recruits in a much shorter time period, 2 versus 4 months on average. I don't know that as a group we figured out all the dynamics culturally what's happening there, but it was something we wanted to take advantage of. And then we typically rotated them on international projects. Great interest by people from other countries to come to Austin and work on projects in the U.S. So it was really a great way of expanding the team and addressing the challenges around recruiting. And then also, people are pulling from adjacent industries. So when you step back and you take companies looking at their core competencies, and it might be around technical automation as opposed to the specific activity within a domain, they were able to pull resources from adjacent organizations, pull them in, and then train them on the specifics, and then in a short period of time, move them up the food chain to where they would develop an expertise that can be built out at a higher rate.
Yeah, Ray, excuse me, Ray, before we move on to the next slide, I just want to make a comment. I think a lot of people would agree that this is almost counterintuitive, your experience with the international hiring. And it's great to see you go to a lot of these other places that people don't consider, typically in doing that. I know I have a friend that works at a local Bay Area company. They decided to open up centers in places like Australia and just hire all the talent they can down there, which is great. But, well, surprising to me that anybody would hire Australians. I am Australian, but apparently it works.
Joe, I think
the other comment I want to make.
I think there was some surprised people in Austin as well when we heard the economics.
Yeah, exactly. Economics are really, as I said, counterintuitive. But in my own experience, I found that hiring director level people pretty much in any country, as you say, even when you go to the traditional places, the offshoring places, it's almost on par with the US. It's really, and I believe it's because there's fewer qualified people available to work for the smaller companies here. That would be my speculation. Okay, thanks, Ray. And moving on to scaling.
The challenge around scaling your team and how do you integrate various level of expertise in there. Several companies have started up a remote group of experts. It was really geographic independent, but we found utilization, fractional utilization of this remote group. So if you think about it on a skill basis, specific skills may be needed for a short period of time and not necessarily dedicated to a project for a long period of time. So supplementing a project, on-site project team with a remote expert group where they had unique skills bringing in worked out really well. Also allowed for us to attract some other talent to the companies here in Austin for people who didn't want to travel as much. and it was very efficient. I know that companies struggle working with SMBs as clients. You can't necessarily on this short-term project get your utilization where you'd like, and through the supplementing of these remote experts, found to be able to bring the utilization up by between 5 and 10 percentage points and improve the profitability on the projects. The other approach to scaling was really move towards a fixed deliverable versus a bucket of hours. And that's kind of a phrase that one of the members here coined. And that's where they're going back to clients who were used to just buying on a dollar per hour and a number of hours per month on a consulting basis, and going back is, let's focus on becoming a risk-sharing partner. Let's have a fixed number, fixed dollar amount per month, having resources available along with SLAs that we can help clients move forward. And it was a way of actually being able, behind the scenes, without the client being aware, of moving people in and out of projects, using the fractional resources that are usually left over for some of the larger projects, as well as engaging the remote expert group. That was the fastest scaling activity that was growing here for companies in Austin by about 60% year over year. A couple of last items. We saw a growing blend of mixed delivery models. That's where there was a global team that addressed one service type, supported by customer-facing regional people. This was in time zone, supported by offshore group of people who were not customer-facing, that were more operational, that could work essentially any hours in support of the delivery. And then lastly, with the growth in business and the challenge around recruiting, businesses in Austin have had to really take a hard look and say, what is core to our customer experience, core to delivering the value out of the products that we have, whether they're hardware or software, and then keeping that as the focus and recruiting for that, or shifting consultants to that focus, and then essentially deciding not to do the other. Either they would enable clients to do it on their own, or they would find other partner organizations to supplement it. And that was a way that they were able to scale and essentially continue to deliver with a growing market.
Great stuff, Ray. I want to just take one quick question while you've got about a minute or two here. And that was going back to your international hiring. And the question was really simple. How did you actually find the international candidates? And that question comes from Rula. So can you give us a quick tip? How do you find people in Africa and Australia?
Yeah, I think the practice is a little bit of land and expand. As the Austin companies move international, they would typically move a salesperson and maybe one delivery person into the region. And it was as simple as letting people know that you're actually looking for resources. Post it on LinkedIn. Just use your personal network. And at least in the UK, Australia, and South Africa, people self-identified and said they would be interested in working on U.S. projects.
Fantastic. Great, Ray. Well, listen, Ray, we have other questions. I can't take them now because we've got to move on to the other respondent. But thanks for that. We'll follow up with all the questions at the end or via email.